to be like right here touching the mic.
I mean, I can be this close if you want me this close.
That sounds great.
Okay.
But yeah, like just start there, and as you kind of move around, you'll get away from it, and you'll be right in the sweet spot.
Sounds great.
But yeah, I don't think we know each other as well as we should. You're from here, aren't you?
I am. Yeah. So I
your whole family's here practically.
Do you know my family?
I knew you got somebody that lives up north of here in Chesterfield, right?
Chesterfield
or ish area. That's where one of my areas was.
Oh, and you served a mission here.
Yeah,
that's right. I forgot
that. I maybe it's not in Chesterfield, but I've heard the name. And it's once you hear Schleiffarth, you don't forget it.
No, it's
especially if it keeps coming up. You're like, who the heck are these people?
That's the thing. We have a weird last name and a big family. So my parents.
That's how I was in St. George. We're the Sirages, and there's 9 of us.
And 9 total, like parents and kids.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, my parents had 8 kids, so 10 of us, and all but one of the kids are boys. So it's like just these Schleiffarth loud boys.
Where do you fall?
So I'm in the middle. I'm the 5th of 8. So in the lower half of the middle.
Yeah, I'm 4 of 7. So
okay. So similar-ish.
But so where did you grow up? Where's home?
Yeah. So I grew up in Kirkwood.
Okay.
If you know where that is. I mean, I was there basically my whole life until, I guess I was 18, went to college, went out to, a little date me here a little bit, went to UVSC, when it was
UVSC.
Utah Valley State College before it was UVU.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know. Right at the end, and I finished my degree at UVU.
Okay.
As UVU. And then I ended up going to University of Utah, got a master's degree there. But yeah, so I lived here until, I don't know, I was 18, I guess, moved out, went to college, went to college for a year, served a mission in Brazil. And then
what part of Brazil?
The Campinas is the city.
Okay.
It's like, do you know Brazil?
My oldest brother served in Recife.
Where is Recife?
That I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, I feel like that's in the north. And so Campinas is in the south-ish. Like they have like a south. It's almost like our south in that like there's a little bit different accent and a little bit more of like the same southern vibe, like the cowboy hat and the riding horses and stuff. Like not that people do that necessarily as much today. I mean, there still is that, but like but their south's a little bit. I wasn't in that part of that like southern Brazil. But in the state of São Paulo, you probably have heard of the city of São Paulo. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's huge. Of course. 30 million people or something. Someone's going to probably fact check me on that.
But I know it's somewhere around
in that
there.
ballpark. Yeah. So anyway, so I served in Campinas, which is also a big city. At the time, I want to say it was maybe like 5 million people or something.
Wow.
It's a big city. You just don't hear of it because one, it's not in the U.S. and we live in our little bubble like everybody does.
Yeah. Unless a city has 30 million people.
Yeah, unless it has like 30 million people. I mean, people know like Rio de Janeiro.
Yep.
And then people, if they know much about Brazil, they're going to know São Paulo. And São Paulo is also a state, so kind of like New York, where you have New York City, New York State. So it's probably like an hour north of the city of São Paulo, something like that. There's a temple in Campinas.
Okay.
Anyway, so I served there. Still speak a little bit Portuguese.
And then you came back home. You moved back here.
So then I've kind of been back and forth between here and Utah a little bit.
You've lived in those places, like even after college?
Which places?
Like you lived in Utah after college?
Yeah. So I ended up meeting my wife out there. And Sam.
Okay.
We lived there for the first, 6-7 years of our marriage, something like that. And then moved back here about 3 years ago.
You've only been here for 3 years?
Something like that, yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
That's like how long we've been here.
Oh, really?
We moved here like the summer of 23.
Huh. So the summer of 23.
So this summer will be 3 years.
Okay, so I think we've been here for probably like a year longer than you.
Wow. What part of Utah were you in?
So we lived in Eagle Mountain. Do you know?
Yeah. I kind of know where that is.
Do you know Lehigh?
Yes.
It's directly west of Lehigh.
Okay.
And for a while, I mean, we kind of lived in Utah County. At first we lived in Orem, and then we moved out to Eagle Mountain.
Why'd you come back here?
Job.
Which is what?
So I do marketing. I work for a company called Eaton, which is like
Eaton?
Eaton, Eaton. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's like electrical manufacturing.
Yeah, I think are my light switches Eaton?
It would not shock me.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't check them specifically, but
yeah, no, I think that's what it is.
This water.
That's the same. That's the same company, huh?
Yeah. So, and they're a huge company, like huge, like publicly traded company. And I specifically work doing like in their fuse division, like electrical fuses.
So you market the fuses?
Yeah. Yes. And so, I mean, we work with a number of distributors.
Like I ask people, take me through a day in your job.
Yeah. So I mean, basically it comes down to a lot of relationship building with distributors and helping them be able to support our products, providing them with the marketing materials, like what we would call like a data sheet, which is all the technical specifications that people might need. We create video content, we create, catalogs and all of that kind of marketing material. Make sure that our distributors have those. We run campaigns, like email campaigns, for example, or other, website advertisement, stuff like that. So we don't sell directly to the public typically. Some things do, like there's a retail end of things, but most of it is done through distributors. Most of it's sold to professional electricians and electrical contractors and stuff like that. And so we're providing them with all of the information that they need to make smart decisions related to what they do.
So are you the one that's like creating the actual content that you're advertising?
So I manage.
Are you writing the emails to?
I mean, not me personally. I manage a department.
Oh, okay.
But yeah. So like our department creates emails. We do a lot in working with our sales representatives and making sure that they have materials that they need. We do like when you do new product launches, we make sure everything's in line to be able to get the right information in front of the right people, make sure their sales team has access to everything they need or fully informed, that kind of thing.
So you must go into an office.
Yeah.
Because they wanted you here.
Yeah. So I go in an office, work there. I'm usually in office like 4 days a week, and there's kind of a hybrid schedule that we have,
But did you work for Eaton before you came out here?
No, I didn't. So
you saw the job and you were like, hey, that's where I grew up.
Yeah, basically. I was looking for an opportunity out in Utah. I was working for a retailer out there, marketing director for kind of a mid-size e-commerce company. And I saw an opportunity here in St. Louis. I mean, I was hoping to be able to see my family a little bit more. I feel like I hadn't really seen my family a lot. I mean, like I'd come in for holidays,
Right.
But that was kind of it. And everyone had kind of been, so like I was saying, I've got 7 siblings. Everyone was kind of spread out across the country. And then everyone was kind of coming back here and had been for a while. And then I was looking for an opportunity, At the same time, my wife's family is out in Utah. So it's kind of like,
we got to leave them to.
Yeah. So, which is hard, it's hard anyway. You cut it. But there's an opportunity here and I took it.
Yeah. That's, we left both of ours. So I know what you mean.
Yeah. It's, Where are you guys from? Where are you from originally?
I'm from St. George.
Okay.
So I grew up in St. George. Ashley grew up in Sandy.
Okay.
So, and now her parents live even north of there. And so it's too far of a drive to practically hit both when we go out to Utah. So
Yeah.
it's like,
what is that, like 5-hour drive?
it's about it's about a 5-hour drive from where her parents are at now.
Yeah.
Probably even a little more, but yeah, it's, so it's even when we go to Utah, we still have to pick and choose.
That's tough.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, we knew that was the situation going into it, and this is where we knew we needed to be. So here we are.
Yeah, I'm glad you're in town. I mean, it's good.
Where do you? Okay, so you briefly mentioned before we started recording that you might even be more experienced in this department than myself. So you had a podcast.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. So it was called 5-Minute Fact Check. Unfortunately, it was fairly short lived. When we were really getting momentum, we kind of got canceled during kind of that COVID era, because what we were doing was fact checking.
Who's we?
Just me. I don't know why I said we. It doesn't make sense.
I mean, was there anybody?
It was really just me. It was just me.
Okay.
Sometimes, yeah. I don't know why I refer to
I do the same thing.
Podcast as like a we, like as an entity or something.
I do the same thing
at all.
I do the same thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense, but I do the same thing.
Yeah. Just trying to sound bigger, you know?
It is.
Maybe. I don't know why.
You have to separate it a little bit. Separate who you are from what you're doing.
And I think that's what a lot of it is, because it's, it was.
This is the Moxie-moron show, but I'm still me.
Yeah. The plural Moxie-moron.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand.
But so it was a short-lived podcast that was, and we really focused on like fact-checking news. There was a lot of, especially during COVID, like factually inaccurate. Like, I am a very factual person. Like, I like to know exactly what is accurate, and I am slow to believe things. I am very evidence-based. And so, like, I kind of would do just analysis of stuff anyway, kind of in my spare time. And then I just started doing a podcast with it. And, started doing it obviously more often at a regular cadence. I think we were releasing once a week. I was releasing once a week.
Well, hey, okay.
But like, anyway, so that's what I was doing. Let me, for a little bit.
Let me ask, because you reached out to me because you are an author. You've written a book and you want to talk about the book. I want to make sure that you have the time on here to talk about what you want to talk about. So at any point, like, if you're like, I just want to get on here, talk about my book and go home.
Oh, it's whatever.
Then that's what we can do.
I mean, let's talk about the book, but we can talk about, I don't care.
Because I feel like we're similar in that, in your podcast in that regard, your intentions for that. And I feel like there's a lot of conversation to be had there, because I'm the same way. In fact, I had thoughts about doing that exact same thing, but more so. In fact, this is kind of a funny story. I tried to do this same thing right when I moved here. And I just bought the one camera and the one microphone. I got a desk and I got everything set, and I had this idea, like I had formulated this idea that I was going to do that exact same thing, except in the church's behalf. I was really passionate about, because I took some deep dives into anti-Mormon literature.
That's a interesting world.
Crazy deep dive. I mean, all the big documents. I mean, they're the two major ones. It was those together were like over 20 hours of content that I listened to, and And I became so passionate about, it was actually a very enlightening experience, by the way. But I became so passionate about like correcting the, and then I came across like Fair Mormon.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen that.
I mean, yes, I don't like spend it like days on there.
I didn't even know that
certainly use them.
I didn't even know that existed, but then after I saw them, I was like, okay, so they're kind of just doing what I want to do, except they're a billion times better than me at it. So, and I don't know if that contributed to why it crashed and burned, but it was an interesting thing because I got everything set up. I got the furniture I wanted. I got the camera I wanted. I got the microphone I wanted. I had blankets up all over my walls. I sat down at my desk. I pushed the record button and I was like, this is a bad idea. And I just kind of sat there and I was like, I chalk it up to the Spirit putting a stop to it for whatever reason. But I had that feeling in my gut and I was like, this is bad. For whatever reason, this is not a good idea. And I abandoned it completely.
You know, with my podcast is a funny thing because I really believe in what I was doing. And the reason I stopped wasn't because I wanted to stop, but really like we weren't able to advertise. We were being blocked from advertising, not because we were saying anything false, because that's not at all, but like it was just a blanket, just trying to shut down any kind of discussion of these types of topics.
Yeah. Tell me how that happened.
So, I mean, it basically came down to like, we were kind of entering like political season and I was doing a lot of advertising, particularly on Facebook.
Well, first tell me what got you started on it. So at what point were you like, I'm going to do this?
I don't remember, but it just was like, man, there's a lot of stuff that just like people need to know what is accurate. And everything I would do, one of the things I was very meticulous about was actually like citing my sources for everything that I would state. And the goal, I mean, I would try to keep everything to 5 minutes. First episode went way over, but my wife, kept making fun of me. I'm like, well, but I was very meticulous about citing my sources and making sure those sources were very rock solid. But I mean, there were a lot of things in the news at the time. It wasn't all COVID related. It was just a crazy time.
Oh yeah.
But like things I'm like, wait, that's not true. Like people don't know, like this story either didn't happen, which is crazy to think, or more commonly was like what was being said was so highly misleading. And I don't necessarily want to get into all those details right now, just because like, when people have a narrative that they believe in, it only does harm to try to persuade them otherwise.
Right.
And everyone's going to stop watching Moxie Morons.
I really don't care about that. So
yeah, but I mean,
I might interrogate you about one thing or another. We'll
sure.
But anyway,
but yeah, I mean, it was more of a broad sweeping cancellation, and they didn't want anything connected to any kind of social issues, and Facebook started blocking that. Was my main source of, I mean, everything was like shot for YouTube, but I had my biggest audience through Facebook, and is what it is. Was
there a particular, like you're saying they like emailed you or notified you and said you're saying this thing and we need you?
No, it was like you've been like identified as like doing socially related content, and we're not allowing it.
Socially related,
like just
content.
saying, like social. I don't remember how they phrased it, but like social topics that what they wanted to do,
and they're just like, no more. We can't do that.
No more. And so, I mean, it was like I didn't have enough of a following. I mean, a few thousand followers, but like it wasn't big enough to run on its own without advertising at that point. Right. And it's like, but the thing I was starting to go toward, though, is kind of at the same time I realized what it was doing to me, and I didn't like it. It's because it was, I would just, there was a certain negativity, that like, hey, look how this guy got something wrong. Hey, look how this was wrong,
right.
And that was never my intent to be like, that, you know,
Right.
is really to try to get accurate information out there on particularly hot topics. And it just kind of, it ends up creating, and I see this with, I'm just, give the benefit of the doubt. I don't have any reason to doubt that, sincere creators for, whatever political thing that like I end up seeing in that people, they're hunting for content.
Yeah.
Right. And in that hunt for content, it's so easy to be negative. Hey, who should we be mad at today? I'm like, it's not really the point.
I've always,
and my goal was never even to be political. That's the thing. I mean, it ended up being a lot of kind of because of this time of the year. Like there's a lot of, as we're moving into political season, like I was never trying to be political. It was just to get accurate information out. But it's such a touchy topic.
Yeah, I've always looked at the just the news journalism in general as kind of a weird thing with that because unless you have, it's the news tries to portray itself as like we are just reporting the news.
Nothing could be further from the truth.
All we're doing is just telling you what's happening, but in reality, unless you have in journalism, unless you have a story, then you don't eat, you don't get paid.
Yes,
and so there has to be mathematically there has to be some unless there's newsworthy things, like to the degree that they're needing and wanting. Unless that's happening every day, you have to fudge your way to make a living to some degree. Because not every day there's earth-shattering things going on that, and maybe there is, but I mean, that's
the thing is,
it seems impractical to me.
They choose the narratives they want to tell, and that's what ends up happening a lot of times. And sometimes you'll see local stories that blow up as these huge national stories. Because for whatever reason they think, it's kind of a sympathetic story. And is it really national news? No, it's not. They're looking for content. And then when you cherry pick whatever topics you want, to kind of fill in those gaps. And this would be like the most charitable way of looking at it. But by just, choosing some of those smaller stories, which ones you want to tell, you end up creating a story. And there are, within news organizations, they look for long-term narratives. It's a business decision. It's the way they do business, because if you can kind of have this long narrative that you're telling, people are invested in, they're invested in your news media. First I was going to say paper. I was like, how old am I? I'm not that old, even though I did go to UVSC.
Hey, I threw papers at one point.
Yeah. But, it's just it's a way of keeping people interested. But that hunt for content, I actually think ends up, you got to be careful with it. Because you can end up just going, I don't know, it's easy not to be dishonest. It's easy to be dishonest, but it's easy to start, I don't know, it's just representing things in a way they're not accurate.
Right.
You kind of brought up, like the anti-Mormon stuff, right? Or whatever you want to call it. I think like there are both sincere and insincere people who are opposed to the church. I'm not saying they're right necessarily or in any way, but like, I think there are people, but it's very easy when you start looking at like content creators, and I've seen a lot of their stuff too. Like, man, like, I'm like, I know that something, there's no way that you can professionally work in like the anti-Mormon space and not know that certain things are untrue. And yet I see them anyway.
Yeah.
And they'll say things that are just absurd, and then like, man, like you've got to have some integrity with it. Right. But that's ends up, even if somebody's being sincere, you're just looking for content. You're like, oh, well, there's this kind of, this thing I heard one time, and yeah, it's not that accurate, but like, just run with it anyway. And that's not unique to anti-Mormonism. That's just kind of, I don't even know why I brought that back up, but
yeah, no, I, cause that was what I was looking into. That's what I was familiar with. But do you have any, one or two examples of things that are still buzzing around in your head that you're like, dude, this was the one that I just couldn't believe people were getting wrong, or people.
If you're enjoying the Moxie-Moron Show, please like the video and subscribe to my YouTube channel, or leave a rating and review on your favorite podcasting platform and share the show with someone. Also, if you really want to support the show and get this thing off the ground, consider signing up for my Patreon, where you can receive early access to episodes, exclusive episodes with my family and close friends, and more exclusive perks. If you're listening to this, you're helping make my dream a reality. So thank you.
From like a news standpoint, or from
your your content that you did on your podcast. That you were like,
man, it's been a while since I've looked at it, because it was a few years ago. I wasn't prepared to talk about this today, so which is fine. I'm trying to think of.
Well, if you don't have any,
I'm not sure I do off the top of my head, because it has been a while. But so this is like the most. I mean, this is, everybody knows this at this point. I mean, it's kind of been, but like I was looking at running a lot of numbers on like COVID statistics, for example, and they were just making things up. Like, I don't know how long they're saying there's
who's they,
like the government, like the official, like COVID people, like the
CDC.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like the CDC was, I mean, like I can't remember how long it was like months. It was like an 8% death rate. And then they, at one point, I think, switched to, this all just top of my head, but like 4% death rate. And I was sitting there with my Excel sheet looking at like all the deaths, and I'm looking at all this data. I'm like, where are they getting 8%? I think I guess maybe taking like 8% of people who ended up in the hospital or something, but that's a very, again, trying to be charitable to them by saying there's any basis for it. I mean, that'd be my best guess as to where maybe they got a number that high. It was always about between somewhere like 0.08 and like 0.4%, which is, drastically different than, by exponentially different.
Right.
But like, so some of the best data on that at the time when things were first happening really was coming out of South Korea, because they were testing everybody. And so you're actually able to get some interesting data on how fast it was spreading and who was getting it and that kind of stuff. And like, if you were to apply that data to the United States, it certainly was not adding up. And very quickly, I realized this, and this is one of the things I tried to talk about. Like, I think before really anyone was talking about, like, of course there are going to be patterns with any disease as far as who's most susceptible to it. It's going to vary. But oftentimes it's older people and people who are overweight. And that was the case with COVID. And so you'd see these higher rate, and when you adjust some of this data for like United States metrics and kind of expectations, again, we're in that range of, less than 1%. Again, I don't have those numbers 100%. I think it was 0.08 to 0.4 is kind of where it estimated, kind of depending on when original infection was. There's a lot of like question about, like patient zero kind of stuff. But like kind of looking at that growth rate and what we would expect. And they were talking, these super high rates that had no basis in reality. And I couldn't find any actual source for these like 8% death rate. Like, what are we talking about? Like that would be, devastating.
Oh yeah.
It was just, and a lot of that has been pretty broadly debunked, right? But that's one that, and most of my podcast wasn't like about COVID, but that is one that I remember digging pretty hard into. And like, this can't possibly, like, what am I missing? And I wasn't missing anything. When they finally came out with the final numbers, I'm like, yeah, that's what I said 6 months ago. How come these professionals can't figure this out? It's not like I'm a disease expert, right? But I know how to do math. I know how to use Excel. And that's really what it comes down to, is like when you're looking at spread rates and how many people are dying. You can't just make up dead bodies. And yet there we were.
Well, okay. That kind of leads into my next question though, is essentially, did you ever feel like maybe you can make up dead bodies? Do you ever feel like
Well, I did.
How do you exactly? Yeah. How do you as a fact checker?
Yeah.
How do you check the data? How do we know that the data Did you ever feel that? Like, did that ever cross your mind? Like, is even the data that I'm reading here?
That's a fair critique. And that is something I thought about. And in the end, I mean, you've got to rely on your most reliable sources. And, I was using, like all the like kind of official government numbers and things, like not necessarily the percentages they're saying, but like when we were looking at like, or, I felt like the data coming out of South Korea was very reliable because they're testing everyone. That's not something we did in the United States. Not something we could do in the United States. I don't think we necessarily should have done that in the United States. I think there are a lot of legal issues that should be legal issues, but they were matter of factly doing it in South Korea. That's a good source of data. Could they be lying? Yeah, they could be lying, and you can't really account for this person's lying. I mean, to some degree, that's how conspiracy theories start.
Yeah, like, somebody comes to
everyone's just making it up. I'm just going to say something else without any real evidence or any like you can't just make things up. You have to have some basis for it. And the world works on trust. And that's a problem when people start breaking that trust.
Well, to that point, like somebody would come to you and say, how do you even know, like, until you go to South Korea, how do you, Tom, know that they were testing everybody in South Korea?
Yeah. I mean, I took them at their word,
right.
And bottom line, I took South Korea's government at their word that they were testing.
Do you think that it can go that deeply? Because that's where we're at now in the world is like there are a decently large number of people, and that number is growing drastically, by the way, of people that believe that there is like this, that there's the cabal, that there's this thing that's fudging whatever they want. And cause that's always been my issue with anything. Like, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
From the anti-Mormon perspective. Okay. This is just to give you an idea of how my train of thought goes. So I was, the horses thing.
Oh yeah.
Okay. The horses thing is the biggest thing. And I have a number to say on that.
I do too, actually. I have a whole, like, we could dig into that topic but go, what were you going to say?
Okay. So for anybody that doesn't know, like, understand the context, there are horses in the Book of Mormon, and the big claim, the big problem with that, it's an anachronism is what they call it, is like something that historically should not be there, that is there. So it proves that it's false. And they say that there's horses during this time period, but history says there were no horses at this time period. I guess there was a species that were roaming around this place millions of years ago, and then they were wiped out. And
they originated here.
Yeah,
supposedly. I mean,
they're native
the belief
here.
Is that they're native to America,
and then they
spread elsewhere.
Yeah. They were extinct here, and then they were brought back here by the Spaniards in the 1500s or whatever. And so now we're finding. Now you'll find on the internet people that are claiming, and it's not always, it's not even like LDS archaeologists. There are just people that are finding that they're claiming that there is archaeological evidence for horses and things here in the States, just like it was stated in the Book of Mormon. But first of all, that's not even unique to the horses thing. It cracks me up. Just the idea of an anachronism cracks me up, because they're like, oh, there's no archaeological evidence to prove that this was. And I'm like, yeah, isn't that kind of the thing about archaeology?
It's like thousands of years old. And
you don't know. Well, you just don't know what it's there until you find it.
Yeah.
And like, why are we saying this thing didn't happen because we haven't found it? That's the point, is, we're still looking for it.
And it's not like even anywhere close to a majority of like of known archaeological sites have been dug. I mean, like, it is, I think, less than 1%. I could be wrong on that exactly, but it's like, it's almost in the Americas.
We like to believe that we've like covered every square inch of the Earth's crust from here, over the entire North American over the whole world, really, and then be like, we didn't find anything. But it's like, dude, there's so much out there that we still haven't even plunged a shovel into, that there's so much that we don't know.
Well, it's funny. It's not even though that like it's just an argument from like an absence of data, because I mean, like you mentioned, like there recently, maybe a couple of years ago, there's like they found horse bones that they're able to at least date the materials direct, like within a centimeter of it, as being from Book of Mormon times. I think you were referencing that, I think. But like, if you were to look at more broadly, like Native Americans say that they had horses before. And there are horses that exist today that we don't know the genetic origin of, that are in America, or American horses. And there are questions about, and specifically, I remember looking at, and I'm not suggesting this is necessarily
right,
like a horse from those times, but like I think it's called the American Curly. It's a curly haired horse. But like kind of has undefined genetic characteristics. My understanding is like the original Appaloosa, which has kind of been recreated. So like the current one is not the original, but the original Appaloosa, like there's questions about like how it came to be, which would have been, in like early like American days. If my memory serves me correctly, it was used heavily by Native Americans. Like there are these horses that exist that we don't even know today where they came from. And we're looking at their DNA like, yeah, this doesn't match. And then we look at like artwork. There's like examples of artwork that has like ancient artwork that has horses in America. And like, there's all this stuff that I'm like, I personally, and this is not fully founded, but just like my hypothesis is that I don't know that it ever went extinct.
Yeah.
I mean, right. That's the story being told. Like you have like settlers coming here and saying that they saw horses, natives with horses.
Right.
And then they're like, oh yeah, no. Like it was just the Spanish.
Right.
And like, I'm not one to call racism. Like I really am, like, you got to be very careful throwing that around. But when you're talking about early America, we're talking about early anyway. I mean, 400 years ago or something, like however many years ago, and it went 400 years ago.
400 or 500?
Yeah, 4 or 5. No, that's right. I'm like, do my math. But like, those are major, like there's this whole idea of like dominance and like, oh, we're better. And like, and this idea of the horse, is kind of this, especially in Europe at that time, like not everybody has a horse.
They want to erase that from history.
I just mean like it's horse is a status symbol. Yeah. I mean, you have to be wealthy to have a horse, and you're going to tell me these, I don't want to get clipped here, but like, like
Native
Americans that they're looking down upon, which is not the way to approach that. Should be right. But like there is this, it would make sense if they were to
remove that from
history. Yeah.
And yeah, I want to go back to the horse bone thing, that they're finding horse bones, because that's the whole reason. This is kind of the whole reason I brought this up in relation to fact checking and talking about this, because so that was like the big thing that I was like, okay, so there's people at the very least are claiming that they found horse bones.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, what? That seems like an ace in the hole. That seems like a nail in the coffin. How is this not? Who's saying? How are we not all on the same page now? And so then, upon further review, I find that, well, okay, here's the adversary to that. Here's why we're not, because nobody can check. Nobody can, or no, there are credible people that are saying they're not horse bones, or that you can't, or that they just can't verify that they're horse bones.
That they're horse bones,
or from this time period. Let's say maybe they are horse bones, but there's just a billion factors that the experts are saying can't be verified that it was from this date, can't be verified that it was this species, can't be verified this and that. And I think, okay,
the species doesn't matter. The time period matters.
Right. Okay.
So if anyone's talking about species, then they're just, like, that's
probably what it was the time period.
Yeah.
That
and which, I don't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, the biggest thing, my understanding of like the biggest critique, and it's a fair critique, kind of fair critique, but like, is that the bones themselves didn't have any organic material that they could still test, but there are items directly around it. And even, I mean, it's generally accepted scientific archaeological like standard, like you can like there's stratification, I think is the term, but like within a strata, you're looking at time periods.
Yeah, that's what it is.
And so, this is, I want to say off the top of my head, like within like a centimeter or millimeter or something of the bones, they're able to test organic material that dates to whatever time period during the Book of Mormon. But the bone itself, so if you want to get very technical, the bone itself could not be dated, though there was no indication that there was contamination.
That's what it was. So that's why that was my question. I was like, okay, so who is it, first of all? Who is it that found this bone, this alleged horse bone? And it's like some random farmer in Mexico.
Yeah.
Farming in his farm, and he digs up a bone. And then they all come over here and they're like, oh, well, we can't date it now because there was too much he screwed it up, or the land is, I don't know how we have our dating methods, and however they couldn't be verified because of what had happened with the ground around it or whatever it was. And then I'm like, okay, well, who's the team that went out? Who went and declared that? And it's like, oh, well, it's these peer-reviewed people that they wrote their reports, and I'm like, and that's what it comes down to, is that there's a group of people, peer review. That is the litmus test. Is like, you're not going to have any credibility. It's not true until it's peer reviewed. And I'm like, who's peer reviewing things? I want to know who are the peers, who's reviewing things. And it's always from, and so that's what I looked into. I was like, what exactly does this mean? And I still don't claim to be an expert by any means, but I walked away thinking that it comes from the universities and from the experts and from the people that, and we have archaeologists today that are under the same scrutiny from the same people that are peer reviewing, and they're stamping their expert approval on, and they're naysaying at a bunch of the archaeologists today, because the archaeologists today are claiming that they're wrong. That's the thing I guess what I'm saying is, we are peer reviewing things based on a truth that we've established. Yeah. The universities, the experts of today, the people, I keep saying universities, but just, the experts of today, we've said, this is what's going in the textbooks. This is what happened from 500 AD to 1700 AD. We figured it out. This is what we've researched. This is what we've the conclusion that we've come to. And this is how we do it, by the way. This is the process by which we verify it. And if it's not done this way, then it can't be verified. And they've established the truth. But now in the age of information, we have archaeologists coming forward and doing their own thing. And they come forward and they say, I'm finding that this is not true. And they're saying this is inaccurate, and you were wrong about this. But the system has to say, you're a crazy person. Randall Carlson, you're a crazy man, because if you are correct, then we're screwed. Then we're not the experts anymore. And so they're protecting that so adamantly, and that's what happened with the even just the horse bone. Forget archaeology in general being proved wrong, but just on the Book of Mormon scale, the horse bones disappear. I'm like, so where's the bone now? Where is it?
Is it missing?
Nobody. I'm sure that there are,
like the bone that we're discussing that's gone missing.
I don't know if we're discussing the same horse bone. I think that there's been
I thought there was like one in particular that
I think that
Maybe
there's
you know
a few,
something I don't,
several,
yeah.
but I just remember like asking where it, but it's like it's maybe there's one at a museum somewhere in Mexico where it's like, oh, this was an alleged, but there's really no, they kind of just take it and now it's gone, or they take, and they're like, or like, we have it, but nobody knows where it is.
Oh, I never really thought about that before. Like where, yeah.
That's what I mean. Is like, I want to go find it. Who has it and show it to me? Because they kind of, that's what everybody's saying about the Smithsonian today. Is there's like this big, great conspiracy about the Smithsonian.
Yeah, I've heard, and
There's a conspiracy about everything.
there's conspiracy, and that's the thing is like, you have to be careful not to get sucked into baseless conspiracy theories. And yet reality is people do conspire. Like, and conspiring is people getting together and deciding to do something, right? And people are not always as trustworthy as they should be. The world runs on trust. I said that earlier. It really does. I mean, business runs on trust. Any interaction, like it's trust. When people break that trust, one of the reasons that lying is such a big deal, because you're just saying some words, who cares? But like you're breaching this whole contract of society. And when we can't trust, especially organizations, and I don't know enough about the Smithsonian to have any opinion on it. But like, if hypothetically the Smithsonian were to be lying about something, like that's a huge deal. How are you supposed to trust that again? I mean, going back to COVID, and I hate to go back to COVID because it's just such a controversial thing.
Right.
But like, but going back to the COVID thing, and like, I remember I had so much faith in the Mayo Clinic. And when I saw them literally, and I was actually working for the Utah Department of Health at the time. But like, so I was like very involved in a lot of the COVID stuff. And when I saw them literally copy and paste just like government stuff onto their website, like it just like the statement about COVID, and like it was none of like their own research. It was none of their own, like they're a very well regarded medical organization, and it just seemed like they were, without checking anything, they were just essentially. I mean, maybe it wasn't literally copy and pasting, but like it was just like, this is the official stance of all of medicine. And we're like, wait, what? It was just weird. It rubbed me wrong, and I lost a lot of trust for them, which, I mean, I still consider them a very, great medical organization, but like it was weird. There was so much, I mean, I don't want to go down that whole rabbit hole.
Well, Tom,
like,
that's kind of and that's just more to my point is what I'm saying is that I feel like there are too many people today that would, as it were, like, for example, look at something like the Mayo Clinic and be like, and if the Mayo Clinic says, oh, if I am sitting in my living room and I'm like, where is this horse bone at? Who has it now?
Yeah.
And the Mayo Clinic says, we have it. Oh, we have it. We have it. It's just sitting in our, whatever, in our office or in a museum that we have. That is enough for people to go, well, it's right there, Kevin. Like, there's no conspiracy anymore, because the Mayo Clinic, which is a huge organization, they can't hide anything, and they're not going to lie. They're way bigger than you are. And here they are. It's a professional company. Everybody knows them, and they're saying that they have it. Why is that not enough for you? And I'm like, dude, it's just not. It's not anymore. I'm not saying that I'm not going to be like 99% sure that they do. And I'm like, okay, like they probably do.
Yeah.
But to be like, that's a fact. They have it. Or they because the Mayo Clinic said this, it is truth. That is still just not, because there's so many ways to, it's like the COVID, what you said about the COVID deaths is like, it's this, if the statement is 8% of people dying by COVID-19, there's so much that goes into that. There's so many factors that would determine, like, is this the cause of death? Or because this person was in the same room with this person, does their death count as? And there's so many of that it's like, even when somebody tells me that, Kevin, there's studies that have been done and reviews that have been and there's peer reviewed this and that. And I'm like, what are they reviewing? What are they, it's just not enough. It's not enough. And that just gives all the meaning in the world to me from Moroni telling us that if you want to know the truth, if you want to know the diamond truth about anything, not just even religious matters, but anything, there's only one pure way to do it. And it's through the Spirit of God. That is it. You can be 99 on a lot of things, but 100.
Yeah.
Only one way to do that.
Well said. Because you can't, I mean, that's the thing, like when you're functioning just in the world, right? I mean, I do think you have to 99%, like
that's what you have to live.
You have to live by that, right?
Right.
I mean, you're going to drive yourself crazy, looking for every way that somebody's conspiring. And honestly, most of the time it's maybe there's dispute over the right way to, for example, count COVID deaths. There's a lot of, like, well, was it the COVID that killed them, or was it the I mean, I don't know. Like it's like,
did they have COVID, but then actually die from something? Obviously,
would they have died? I mean, even something like, for example, like significantly overweight, me, but I'm just using myself because I'm not looking to offend anybody,
Sure.
But like, significantly overweight, like that condition, that matter of fact, makes me much more susceptible to COVID. So like my likelihood of dying versus your likelihood of dying. Right. And like, how do you count that? How do you factor in for like, yeah, COVID killed him? Well, yeah, but also like, he ate like crap for
that's what 60, I mean.
50
and that's
years of
all
his life.
Stuff.
It's like, it's a difficult conversation, even when people are being totally honest and being totally, just trying to be as fair and right about it as possible. Like there are real questions.
Yeah. And the statement could be true technically, like on paper. Sure. But we're not taking enough time to even consider what is the process in that?
Yeah.
I've heard studies, you come across like the stupid advertisements on Facebook or studies have shown this or studies have shown that. And some of them I read and I'm like, how do you even study that? How do you actually, and I've taken one or two.
So many of those are paid for. I mean,
I know,
by the advertising or by the company selling the product. Generally,
and most people know that. Yeah. I think most people know that, but the principle is the same. The principle stands. And in that, how do you study it, dude? How do you study it accurately?
Here's the thing that I think most people don't realize, and I didn't realize for a long time. When you're looking at research, you need to be very careful because like facts are important. I said that kind of beginning of this show is like facts are very important to me, making sure to get information straight. But you can't ever be 100%. I mean, to your point. But like when you're looking at best case scenario, like any given study, they test to typically a 95% likelihood of being able to repeat those results. And so that means 1 in 20 studies that meet that 95% threshold are wrong. Right.
Right.
And that's just on the surface. So you can go a lot deeper into that. And there are a lot of other challenges, studies being set up correctly, studies, of course you're looking at honesty. There's what's called p-hacking. Not going to get into all that, but like it starts getting technical and sometimes over my head. P-hacking is essentially like, we're trying to hit that 95%, but maybe if we remove these few things here, now we're up to 95%. Like these samples that we're testing against, it's basically trying to hit that threshold. And there can be legitimate reasons for doing that, but it's often abused and it's a problem within kind of the academic industry, and it is an industry. But you have to be able to trust something, right? And 95% is a lot better than 0%. Mm-hmm. I mean, what's your other option? But you always have to keep in your mind, like, yeah, probably, is because you have to be able to operate within the world and have some trust between people. And people are going to steer you wrong every once in a while. But if you can keep some kind of, probably, like, okay, somebody said something, like, you just got to take all of it with a grain of salt, so to speak, because there's we often, when it comes to science, like there's this way of speaking in absolutes that at very least, and I don't live within like the scientific world, but at the very least, like in the layperson world, we speak in absolutes. It is this way. Like it's been proven by science.
Yeah.
Like what is like science is
even
the
though
testing,
all
hoping to
science,
get to some kind of accurate information.
Yeah, all science. In fact, even the scientists, I believe, would all agree that all science is theoretical.
Yeah. And I think generally the reason I said I don't live, within that scientific world, because I think a lot of true scientists understand that within their realm of expertise, right?
You'd have to, or you're not a very good scientist.
Exactly. I mean, that's how they work. But like to the lay person, that's a very different, people they're not going to have that understanding.
Yeah. It's easier to just say, this is a thing.
An expert said this, I'm going to believe it. I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got enough to worry about. We've got families. We've got our own jobs. We've got, like you can't go out and prove everything yourself as much as even like going back to the horse bone thing, like as much as I'd love to see the horse bone, to be honest with you, I wouldn't know the difference.
I can't. Yeah. And I can't,
like, I don't, there's a bone. Probably.
I'm not going to go.
I'm not really even sure about that.
And that's the thing. I'm not going to go. I'm not going to buy a plane ticket and fly to Mexico and go to this museum and find out if, and then maybe there are people that do
your own testing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, how would you even you could have any bone in the world and you wouldn't know the difference. At least I wouldn't.
And I think that while most people in the world are aware of that, and while most things are correct and can be taken at face value, and while we should have a lot of trust in humanity, I think that it would be naive to suggest that nobody in positions of power would take advantage of that fact, of that reality, that we're not going to go. Most people are not going to go to that crazy extent to fact check this. And I think that there are people that understand that and are taking advantage of that.
Yeah.
The government being number one.
Yeah. I mean, I think, but they always make the government like the bad guy, but there are a lot of people within the government that would absolutely do that.
Right.
And there's certain people that seek out power. And I would say, this is just my own guess, but the majority of those are probably not.
I'll quickly say
who we want to trust.
I'll quickly say that I think that this is the reason that this time is different than all years of humanity past is because of the age of information. I think that the tables are turning like they never have before in the past, not because necessarily we're being just horribly misled, but because we have access to information in a way that we've never had before. And I think that this is kind of a result of that, as people are, to a degree, really waking up to certain conspiracies and things that actually have some truth to them.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And it's actually, it's actually segues really well into my book. Because and I hate to transition right there, but this ties so well. So
let's do it.
It actually I think I'm going to need to give a little bit of preface before I get to that transition point, but there's some really interesting information that I came across kind of in my research for this book. So I haven't told you anything about the book. I told you I had a book.
You said it was gospel related.
Yeah. So it's called Adam versus Evolution, Rediscovering the Original Creation Story. And
I love it.
Yeah. So it's obviously about the what do you call it? The theory of evolution and kind of how that works with creationism and kind of that ongoing battle, so to speak. But what it's really about is understanding the original intent of the creation story. And I think a lot of people, sometimes I'm I don't know. Am I the only one who doesn't know this? Does everyone else know? I had all these questions, right? There's kind of how do what is the theory of evolution versus what we're reading about in the scriptures? How does that really interact with each other?
Yeah, are all these Neanderthals just non?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions there.
Yeah,
and I really I never even really intended to write this book. I was just really curious about the topic. It was nothing like a faith crisis. It was nothing. I was just what is going on? And so I started doing a lot of research and studied and researched stuff for 2+ years, just trying to find answers to what in the world, like what are we supposed to make of the creation story? And I'm looking at the science, speaking of science, and like, honestly, most of my life, like, so I kind of grew up, I mean, I guess with like, I never would have phrased it this way, but like a young earth creationist perspective, kind of like, oh, like the Bible says this is how it happened, like this, how, like that. So that's my perspective, not everybody's perspective. But so I'm looking, I'm like, and then I'm looking at like the scientific research. I'm like looking at the science, like for example, radiocarbon dating, it makes sense. I mean, whether or not everything's accurate or not, there are
Like the process of
radiocarbon dating makes sense. You have basically a regular rate of decay that you're measuring. You're able to date back. The math makes sense. Now there are, things like calibration that make a difference. I don't know if you know much about that, but it's basically like, I'm just going to like, how does like the changing climate affect, and it does affect.
I've thought about that.
Yeah.
A lot.
So they try to calibrate the radiocarbon dating process. There are flaws within that, and there are reasons to critique, and that's science, right? I mean, literally is like, okay, how do we make this better? But like the overarching idea makes a lot of sense. And so as just in recent years, I guess I'm like, okay, like what is the deal then? Like, is there some truth to it? Is there not? And I don't know. Like, let me just ask you this: what's your perspective on like how do you make sense of the theory of evolution and the creation story?
That's what I've chalked it up to. I'm a big. In fact, the origin of man is the one that everybody talks about in the church.
I have an interesting insight on that.
But I'd be interested to hear it. The biggest thing for me is 2 Nephi chapter 2.
Remind me what exactly is in.
That's a lot of it is like the fall.
Okay, that's when Lehi is talking about like they come back. That
without law, there's no punishment, and if Adam hadn't partaken of the fruit, then this wouldn't happen. That's that whole chapter. And what the unique doctrine that we have in the church from that chapter is that if Adam hadn't partaken of the fruit, then they'd still be there today. Then they would have remained in the same state that they were created in.
Yeah.
So to my understanding, the way that I interpret that is God created Adam from dust.
Yeah.
And he created Eve from Adam, and he created them in a state to where if they didn't fall, then they wouldn't have, there's no evolution going on. There's no adapting. There's no evolving. They would have remained in the same state. And even that's debatable because I don't know, what is the state that we're talking about here. But I just believe, it makes sense to me that really the biggest thing is that nothing would die. Nothing dies until, and so that, and until Adam was created, as far as I know, like all the animals were created. And some people are like, okay, well, we read about the creation. We read about God creating all the animals, and then he creates Adam. How much time could have passed in between God creating all the animals? Because again, Adam falling was the same. It caused everything to fall. The earth fell and all the animals on it fell. Everything was created, everything falls, and everything has to be redeemed.
Yeah.
And everything has to be restored. And so even the animals were on the same clock that Adam was. They weren't, no animals were dying until Adam fell, until Adam made it possible for them to die and so that's my understanding. And so when I hear about, and I've thought about that, well, maybe the creation period in which God created all the animals, maybe he was experimenting with dinosaurs, and while we read it being a day where he creates the animals, maybe it was like 100 million years or whatever we're saying it was. and we finally get to Adam and we have everything right by then. And so now we're ready for the Garden of Eden and everything to stay the same until the fruit's partaken of. But I don't think that that's how it was. I just, as far as the archaeological evidence that is presented to us today, with dinosaur bones being millions and millions of years old, I truly don't know. I grew up in the world of this is how it is. Yep. And they're millions and millions of years old. And I'm at the point where I'm not like, no, that's not true, but I don't see how it could be for the time being. I don't know.
This is exactly where I launched, like, just digging into things. It's exactly my kind of thinking on that.
So what do you got for me?
Yeah. So there's so many starting points with this. One thing I think is really interesting about the church is, more than any religion, I can't imagine there's another religion that is more invested into the creation story than the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
I agree.
I mean, not only is it in Genesis, like it is for everybody, it's, as you mentioned, in the Book of Mormon and Nephi chapter 2, particularly as it goes into a lot of details on that. It is the majority of the Pearl of Great Price in the Book of Abraham and the Book of Moses. It is in the Doctrine and Covenants. It is the backbone of some of our temple ceremonies.
I'm going to pause you really quick.
Yeah.
I'm going to pause the recording too.
If you're enjoying the Moxie-Moron Show, please like the video and subscribe to my YouTube channel, or leave a rating and review on your favorite podcasting platform and share the show with someone. Also, if you really want to support the show and get this thing off the ground, consider signing up for my Patreon, where you can receive early access to episodes, exclusive episodes with my family and close friends, and more exclusive perks. If you're listening to this, you're helping make my dream a reality. So thank you.
Okay, I had to turn off the air. I don't even know if it was getting picked up, but better safe than sorry, I guess.
Yeah, I tend to tune stuff out. So like it could have been like blasting in my ears. I wouldn't even notice.
Yeah.
But when I get focused in on something, I'm like,
anyway, I cut you off.
Yeah. So what was I saying? Oh, I was saying, so the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is more invested in the creation story than any other religion out there. I really can't imagine a religion be more invested in this story.
Right.
I mean, because I was saying, as you mentioned, we have it in First Nephi chapter 2, talking quite a bit about the creation account that Lee had just read. Obviously, the book of Genesis, the book of Moses, the book of Abraham. It's talked about in the Doctrine and Covenants. It's even in the backbone of some of our temple ceremonies. Mm-hmm. I mean, just very, like, it is an important story. And what's really interesting, I mean, I'll get into this a little bit more in a second, but like, it's been revealed over and over. Like, it's clearly like a really important story. It was revealed to Moses, revealed to Abraham, revealed to Joseph Smith. I believe that revealed to Enoch, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have a source on that, but I'm pretty sure that's accurate.
It's so old, by the way, the record of it. It's funny to me that we're just like, oh yeah, this is how the creation happened, when it's the oldest. It's the oldest story in the book.
Yeah, it's extremely old.
And we think that we still have all of it, everything that we need to know about it.
There's so much history. So a lot of the book talks a lot about the history. I mean, because we have to understand the history and the setting to understand its intent. And there are things that, like, I feel like were like brand new discoveries. At least they were to me. I've never heard anyone talk about them. That I'm going to get to in a second, but really changed my perspective. Not necessarily on evolution. I've come to a point right now where I don't have a perspective on evolution, which is, we'll get there. But like, I certainly did. I certainly very much shared everything that you said. Like, I'm just like, I don't know. Seems a little sketchy to me. We came from monkeys. I mean, I'm like, I don't know. Like, maybe I guess saying about anything in science. Like, I don't know. I don't really have a perspective on it. Right. I mean, I'm not whatever kind of scientist that is, like it's not something I've studied intensely. I've read about it. I'm not clueless about it. But like, that's not like my area of expertise. I'm like, okay. But like, what the creation story though, there's so much to talk about, and there's so much in understanding the full setting of everything. But like I was saying, so Latter-day Saints are more invested though in the creation story than any other religion. That's really important. But what's really interesting though is, at least according to Pew Research, they did a survey, I want to say 2024. Latter-day Saints, more than any other Christian religion, if I recall correctly, believe in the theory of evolution. Something like 81% of Latter-day Saints believe in the theory of evolution.
Okay.
Possibly like the majority of that, vast majority of that would be like some kind of God-guided theory of evolution. And then something, again, this off the top of my head, maybe 17%, 18% believe that things were created without any evolution, like just kind of as is. So I found that really interesting, like kind of a weird, like, because we're so invested, and then like this vast majority of people, supposedly.
You would think that percentage would be a lot lower.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, general Christians are about 10% lower than us. So interesting, right? And just continues to like, and usually what I hear from people is, I mean, either just kind of sweeping it under the rug, like I don't want to deal with it, just kind of like, I don't know. Or like, yeah, I think that God used evolution to create Adam and Eve, which brings up a whole plethora of other questions.
Yes.
But
I've had conversations along those lines.
Yeah. So in researching this though, like I found there's so many really interesting things I want to touch on for a second. We can get as deep into them as you want, but then this all kind of came back to this conspiracy thing that we were talking about. But there's some interesting history that I think is worth touching on and understanding things. So one of the first things I noticed, you're talking about like the 6-day creation, right? And so in the book of Moses, there's a lot that's kind of deleted from the book of Genesis. I'm just going to call it deleted. I don't think it's an accident. But there are particularly things in relation to spirituality, and the later iteration of Judaism, or what I mean today we call Judaism, but it's kind of like this is an ancient Hebrew religion. Mm-hmm. But the kind of current, like even in Christ's day, became very much about the law and following the law, right? The kind of the more spiritual, like more maybe even like mystical, if you will. I don't love that word, but side of it kind of disappeared over time, and was some of Christ's critiques of that.
Are you talking about like letter of the law, spiritual law?
Yes, I mean there are lots of like, and this isn't like a diss to any Jewish people or anything, but like kind of like there are, I don't even know that much about Judaism today as much as I do about like Judaism and like Christ
history. Yeah.
Yeah. But like, I mean, just certain, what do you call like in preparing their food, things need to be kosher.
Kosher.
Yeah. And my understanding is that's a fairly involved process in making things properly kosher. And, very much like law of Moses and law. I mean, they don't currently do sacrifice, but like very much like and that has more to do with the non-existence of a temple than anything else, is my understanding. But which I always wondered about. I'm like, why did Jews not do it?
Now I'm wondering it.
Yeah, but my understanding anyway is because sacrifice has to be done at the temple, and the temple is currently destroyed.
Yeah.
And any Jewish people out there can fact check me and let me know if I'm wrong about that. But in any case, I mean, but like there's kind of this. Speaking historically, though, a lot of the more spiritual aspects of things was disappearing. This is Christ's critique, and you're talking about the scribes and the Pharisees, and about like how many steps you can take on the Sabbath, and how many there's the whole with ox in the mire, like people are debating whether or not they can save their animal. Mm-hmm. Or I mean, maybe I don't know if there's debate about that, but it's worth consideration, worth Christ's words, like, of course you go save your animal. Like that's not the point of the Sabbath. Yeah. Right. But so anyway, I'm a little off topic, but so speaking of going back to the creation itself, this is one of the first like big things I hit. And I was like, oh my goodness, that is so interesting. But like, we often hear about like this 6-day creation. And I think more than the Moses account, we read the Genesis account. And one of the challenges even within the Moses account is that there are these chapter breaks, which are not original. I mean, they're just for our ease of reading. But so there's kind of this break at, I'm just going to call it an inopportune time for the purpose of understanding the creation, some of the things that are happening. But like that creation, the 6-day creation is a spiritual creation. It's a planning period. And that's explicit in the book of Moses and in the book of Abraham. And this is the verse that I was pulling up for you that, as just mentioned to you a second ago, I think off camera. But so in the book of Moses, in Moses chapter 2, goes through, I'm not going to read that, but like, I mean, it's the 6 days of creation, talking about the whole 6 days of creation. And then in chapter 3, it says, this is verse 5, "For I, the Lord God, created all things, which I have spoken," talking about the thing, those 6 days, "spiritually, before they were naturally upon the face of the earth. For I, the Lord," and we get some of this in the book of Genesis, "For I, the Lord God, had not caused it to rain upon the face of the earth. And I, the Lord God, had created all the children of men, and not yet a man to till the ground." So he's created all of us spiritually, but not, and that was the 6 days. "For in heaven created I them, and there was not yet flesh upon the earth." And I've read that verse a million times, right? Not a million times, but you know what I mean? But like, so that 6-day creation is not the creation of the earth as we think of it. In the book of Abraham, he says it only counseled to do so. I believe it's the exact phrasing that they use in the book of Abraham.
What did they say?
The gods had only counseled to do so.
Okay.
So up to that point, they'd only counseled to do so.
I see.
So it says it's created spiritually here in the book of Abraham. What exactly that means, we don't know. But like in the book of Abraham, it says it counseled to do so. So these 6 days, even the days, what does that mean? Periods of some kind, even still. But I can hear the dryness of my mouth here in the microphone.
No worries.
But so I found that very interesting, right? So that kind of 6-day idea is really one that is a remnant of the book of Genesis, which is, we know to be incomplete. But what's really interesting as I continue to dig into things is that going to really to the, so, okay, here, trying to think how hard to hit this. But I'm going to go for full force here. The Adam and Eve story, the creation story, does not belong in the book of Genesis at all. This is crystal clear in LDS scripture, but we just haven't realized it. It belongs in the book of Exodus. So if you remember for a second, think about Moses. He goes up to the mountain, right? And he gets the 10 Commandments. That's a story we all know. He comes down, people are worshiping the golden calf. He goes back to God, gets the 10 Commandments. But what we don't talk about very much, and this is really this is the starting point. Have you read any of Margaret Barker's work?
I don't know who that is.
She is a Methodist, or I guess now retired Methodist minister, I believe, who has she's a biblical scholar as well. She's become popular in LDS circles because so much of her work aligns with the restored gospel. And I was reading one of her books. She was one that I would recommend to you called Temple Theology, I think is the book that I was reading. But it's not what she was saying. It was just that she mentioned this time period. She's talking about this time period. In the Bible, and I just had never thought about it this way before. But so Moses goes up and he gets the 10 Commandments, sure. But he also gets these very specific, and this is all in Genesis, in Exodus. The very specific instructions on how to build the temple and how to build all the temple furnishings. And here's the thing that's a little confusing. So there are a few scholars out there who have kind of pieced together some of this. What they don't realize is how explicit it is for Latter-day Saints. We know in the book of Moses goes up to the temple and up to the mountain.
The mountain.
And the whole book of Moses, for the most part, or at least through chapter 5, is the creation story. He receives the creation story. He receives instructions on how to build the temple. And then he comes down from the mountain and immediately begins construction on the temple. And that temple is the creation story. Everything about the ancient temple that Moses constructed is the creation story. When they would construct the temple, they would construct it in 6 days. The first day, they would build the Holy of Holies, which represented like God's presence in the beginning. And then they would put the veil. And the veil represented, not only does it represent Christ, but it also represented like the creation of the skies. And then I believe on the third day there was like a bronze laver for ritual washing. And that represented the seas, the creation of the seas, and so forth. And the entire creation story is actually, it goes right there in Exodus. Like quite obviously, like when you put all that together, like Moses is going up and he's receiving this and so like the entire creation story was always for the temple. It was like the temple itself, is laid out with all kinds of creation adornments and things like that.
So there's
so much. Yeah.
Let me just clarify what you're saying. So what you're saying is that the creation story, while it's found in Genesis,
it is found in Genesis.
It's found in Genesis today, but it was really given as far as the timeline goes.
Yeah.
Like the only reason that we have the creation story is because it was given to Moses in the Exodus portion of the Bible.
It was
That's
given
what you're
Exodus
saying.
up on the mountain.
In relation to building the temple.
In relation to building the temple.
Like this is why we're giving you the creation story in the first place.
And we see the same pattern with Joseph Smith.
That's kind of blowing my mind.
Yeah, it blew my mind. This was like my wake up moment because I'd found a few interesting tidbits like I'd shared with you just a second ago. But this was the moment for me. I was like, oh, like my goodness, like this is the creation story. In Genesis, we're not using, and I have to be careful here a little bit, but like in the temple, like we're not using a random story or part of history as part of our ceremonies there. Rather, our ceremonies have been recorded and put into the book of Genesis. It's a remnant that has been misplaced, and I actually think intentionally misplaced. By those who were corrupting the ancient Hebrew religion. Mm-hmm. And there's a reason for, I'm not just like making that up. We can get there in a minute, but yeah. So the purpose of the creation story has never to be just a bit of history, right? It is specifically a covenant making, what I believe very much to be
instructions.
An instruction. And if you look at it, it's the plan of salvation. I actually consider it the most important story in Scripture. And the most important thing that happens in Scripture would be Christ's atonement. But the most important story being told is the creation story, because it is the story of the plan of salvation. And Adam and Eve, they represent each of us. They're our first parents. They're real people. It's not just, I call it a figurative history. That like, these are things that happened, but not necessarily in like the literalistic way that we often interpret. Like if you were to look at like the creation story, just step back for a second, right? You've got
a talking snake.
This talking snake, exactly. You've got this cherubim, or I should say these cherubim that and like a flaming sword. So this like mythological creature and this sword pointing in every direction and like fruit that gives you eternal life. And if we were just look at the outside of Scripture, we'd be like, okay, this is, either just a fun story, it would be one way of looking at it, or this is a very symbolic story.
Parable.
It's a parable. Yeah, it's this allegory. And that's what I believe it is. It's an allegory about some real things that happen, right? And real, but not necessarily in the way that we think of it from like a modern lens. We're so, especially like post like scientific revolution were very like me. It's very like, I need these facts. I need them straight. And I need them, like in a box, but that's not necessarily the way that like ancient Hebrews would think about truth, where it was more like, what's the practical implication of this thing that I'm learning? And so, yeah. So I believe as particular, so you can kind of get to this point. Some of the people I cite in my book are, an evangelical guy. I don't even know if he might be Jewish. But a Harvard professor that is kind of figured, they refer to it as like a temple text, right? Without even realizing necessarily that it was received on the mountain, like we can know from the book of Moses, but they've come to recognize just from their research that it is indeed a temple text, and is used for worship that way. And a lot of that comes down to looking at the ancient Hebrew temple, because everything about it was just adorned with the creation story. And that was the moment that totally changed my perspective on what we're supposed to be getting from that. Like whether or not evolution's true, I don't know. That's kind of like like maybe it's true. Like the question is in the book, is Adam versus evolution. I don't know. That's the answer. Sometimes we find the answers a little different. What I don't know that any of it was really intended to be literal. It's intended to help us progress. When you look at science versus religion is all about the salvation of souls. Science is about discovering how the physical world works. And when you try to like mash those things together, like I think we're making a mistake. Just because that's not the intent. It's not like, oh, one's true, one's false. There's just different intentions.
Well, the way I've always looked at it is that religion, because and my brother likes to say this a lot. There was I can't remember who the general authority was that said it, but say that true science and true religion are the same thing. And I've always looked at religion as science and religion are both like the study of reality at the end of the day. We're trying to figure out how things work or what things are. What is the objective reality that we're living in? I think that religion just starts at the top because it's God.
Yeah.
And he's trying to tell us how it works. And then science, we start from the bottom. We start from sticks and rocks and we figure out fire and then we invent the wheel. And then, but God's on the other side of the spectrum. And he's like religion's moving this way.
That's a really interesting way to,
That's why so many things in religion sound goofy, but yet it's the same thing. God's still, even if God's a celestial being and he's playing a different ball game than we are, he's still real. He's still just as real as we are.
Yeah,
and therefore he has to exist in a universe. He has to exist, to some capacity. And that's why that was my whole episode from before. I did a whole episode just solo on myself talking about that concept, is that like, that's the only thing that the crucifixion or the atonement makes sense to me, because
is
that if God isn't limited by reality, if God isn't playing by scientific rules, then none of that would make any sense. There would be no need for a son of God.
It's the big difference between Latter-day Saint theology and
mainstream
Christian theology. Yeah. And the big trouble that they have is this, what they call the problem of evil. It really comes down to how powerful is God? And if God doesn't have laws that he's abiding by, just laws of nature or whatever, then why is he making Jesus suffer? And why are we suffering?
That's the $1 million question.
What end? But no, we've all pre-existed. Some of us have chosen evil, that it's not God designed us for evil, or God, which is effectively, the other view on that.
So that's what I mean when I say God is at the top. God's already arrived at, he's won the game of science. He knows all the science. and we're just trying to figure it out, and we're moving like this, and God's telling us a lot of things. And that's the funny thing, is that we're down here and we're like, I want to know what's up here. Tell me what's up here. And God goes, all right, here you go. And we're like, no.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Like,
that's wrong.
How is God going to explain this? I mean, just pretending for a moment that we're all knowledgeable and have reached the pinnacle of scientific understanding, like trying to explain atomic particles to somebody even 400 years ago, and be like, what are you talking about?
And even the interactions,
you know what I mean? Or like, it's so, you have to dumb it down.
Jesus comes to us and he's like, hey, he's like, I'm not gonna, I can't show you the process by which this happens, but I can show you that if you're righteous, you can turn water into wine. You can do that, and it's based on what you do every day. It's based on your righteousness. It's based on there's a power that you can literally control the elements. And we're like, but all the scientists are like, no, you can't do that. That I don't know what this record is. I don't know who saw Jesus do or what they said about it, but scientifically that's impossible. You have to, and God's like, no, it's just science that you don't
understand.
We like to, that's what Skousen's whole thing is. We like to, Cleon Skousen, his whole thing, the way that he said it was like, we as humans, we like to explode things together and use force to accomplish things. And we do chemical reactions and make things happen. While God, he talks to things. He speaks to things. He has the honor. That's what it says in the Doctrine and Covenants, is that my honor is my power. It's still a science. It's still things that are physically happening, but it's just a different thing.
It's a different thing than what we understand.
Yeah, we can't comprehend it right now.
Yeah, there's so much. I think that we like to think that we have all the knowledge, but we really don't. And that takes a lot of humility and a lot of trust in God. And I think that one of the reasons God doesn't give us all of the knowledge is because he wants more than us having knowledge, is us to have trust in him. But so thinking a little bit more about, like some of the creation stuff you brought up earlier, I think is the origin of man, and kind of how that plays into creations. And so really interesting. I've never heard anyone point this out before.
That's a document from the church, by the way, if anybody wants to look that up. That's kind of the debated.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. The main official-ish statement.
Official-ish is right.
Yeah. It's like, so it was, first presidency statement by, I believe, Joseph F. Smith.
Right.
That stated unequivocally that humans are not did not come from animals. I'm trying to remember the exact phrasing. So a couple things that are interesting about that, because there are a lot of things, as it's just generally researching this topic, that they kind of get hung up on. I've got a whole chapter devoted to this. So there are a lot of statements made throughout the ages, or throughout, I should say, since the founding of the church, kind of on this topic. But that particular statement had a major impact. That statement, though, it's important to realize, was never stated as being a revelation. It's Joseph F. Smith and his counselors, and it's just the three of them signing it, stating their understanding of what they believed to already been doctrine. That's what the statement says. It says, I'm trying to remember the exact quote, but it says, like, we're not putting forth anything that we believe to be new. It says something very close to that in the document. But what's interesting that I don't think that is often realized is that 2 years later, Joseph S. Smith came out and clarified. He's like, and said, like, we don't actually have revelation on evolution, and very little has been revealed about how the earth was created. And he made that very clear. That's not the clarifications are never, as like, they don't get the same press that the original statement does. But, he wanted to clarify that. And this shows Smith, who I'm sure still himself believed very much in it. I think there was some disagreement within the Quorum of the 12. on that, and like what has and has not been revealed. That's been his understanding. That's what he put out there. And that can be hard to grapple with sometimes, because I think sometimes we kind of idealize our general authorities, and there's kind of this like assumption sometimes that like omniscience comes along with the call, where no general authorities ever actually said that, you know, and and instead throughout the scriptures, when we see, you know, that like the apostles are instructed to seek learning through study and through prayer and through, you know, like in their conversation, it's not like they just know.
Right.
And so like, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't listen to somebody. We should listen to our college professors on the things that they're expert in. We should listen to our prophets and apostles, and, you know, to assume all the time that everything stated though is like a revelation from God. It's just not true. And that's a hard thing to grapple with sometimes. But it's just the reality, and we need to develop our own relationship with God and come to understand, you know, what he wants us to be doing in our lives. And that's the important thing. So there are a lot of statements. Brigham Young had a very different perspective, just as an example. Brigham Young had a very different perspective on the creation story. He was not a believer in, he called it a baby story, at one point. But what's interesting though, is he's also one who organized the endowment that, you know, is very much centered around the creation story. But it goes back to the point, because that's not the point of the creation story. It was not a historical story as we often think of it. It is a story about covenant making. And there's so much in the book. I break down a lot of the symbolism of the creation story and what these things would have meant to an ancient Hebrew audience. And you know, we can have all of that knowledge and all of the other perspective because we have so much information today, right? And some of it's a little harder because we have to get into their heads a little bit, in that like it was originally revealed to them. But like, there's so much that like, just understand it. For example, like what is the serpent? You know, a lot of prophets have said that like, yeah, serpent, I mean, it's symbolic, right? What does the serpent represent though? Like, what does it mean? A lot of people, including myself, like, oh, keep being told that there's like a lot of symbolism in the endowment, but like, what am I supposed to be learning? You know, at least that's been my experience, right. You know?
Yeah.
But like when you start digging deeper and start thinking about it from a plan of salvation standpoint, and like the serpent it can represent a lot of things, but in particular, so we're told like the serpent's like cast down onto the ground and like eat dirt for the rest of his days, you know, that kind of thing. And like, did the serpent have legs? Like cast down from what? Is he just kind of like staying what he is? He's getting off the hook, you know, like what is like, if we really break that down, what's being said? And I kind of connect this together in the book through a number of scriptures, but I believe that serpent, again, being symbolic, I'm not suggesting that dragons are real, but it was effectively a dragon with wings. And wings, we're told, at least on other creatures, by Jesus Christ himself, as recorded in Doctrine and Covenants, are representations of authority and power. And so him losing his authority and power, being cast down, and then again, that stepping on the head and the bruising of the heel that have power to bruise the children of Adam and Eve's heel, that they would have power to crush or his head, again, is kind of a statement of power and dominion. And which is, to that point, Jesus actually refers to that in the New Testament when the 70 come back from their mission. And they're excited about being able to cast out demons and kind of talking about some of these experiences they've had. And he refers to that and to talk about how the children of men, have the power to I'm trying to remember the exact phrasing, but to step on the heads of serpents and scorpions or something to that effect. Mm-hmm. That's what he's referring to. And I mean, it is actually, it's a representation of Satan's power, and that kind of a transferring of power and ability to the children of men. Now, though men have not necessarily changed, they are now greater than Satan and all of his followers. On a side note, a little interesting, other little tidbit that I found interesting is that the serpent, at least according to the book of Moses, is not Satan himself, which is something I never realized. I don't know if you ever caught that, but is actually like he talks about like putting it into the heart of the serpent, and then the serpent did these things. It's like more of the Satan. I believe this is a little bit my perspective is that like Satan had already been cast out at this point, and is already you couldn't just go in. So this goes back to more symbolism. The garden is the presence of God. Anciently, gardens and mountains. We talk about like the mountain of the Lord.
I've heard about the mountains being,
That represents generally the presence of God. Reiterated by the fact that the cherubim guard the way, like when Adam and Eve can't return. Cherubim always guard the presence of God throughout the Bible, throughout Hebrew culture. Which in cherubim, that's like plural for cherub.
Yeah.
I didn't know that a couple of years ago anyway.
Seraph and seraphim, I think, are the same.
Yeah, I'm not totally sure on. Yeah,
not the same thing as a cherub. Cherubim. Yeah. I'm just saying those words.
Seraphim
is the
that pluralization with the I am or yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I thought seraphim was more like snake related, but I'm not certain on that. But where was I going? Oh yeah, but I mean, it's my belief, just kind of looking at this, that Satan was already cast out at this point, and that he went to someone else because he couldn't enter the presence of God, and so he went to someone else, and someone who knew, had the capacity, who was very subtle, had the capacity to trick Adam and Eve, at least what he believed to be tricking them, and persuaded him to also betray God. I mean, these are the followers, and maybe even as more broad representation of the in general. The was a third of the host of heaven, to pulling away the followers to go against us. Again, Adam and Eve in many ways represent us. Like, yes, they're real people, but also are representative.
That's an interesting point. That how could Satan himself be conversing with God in his presence if he was already cast out?
Yeah, I don't think he was.
That's which is interesting
in the book of Moses. I mean, it says something. Is it the book of Moses or Abraham? No, because Abraham doesn't touch on Adam and Eve. It cuts off before that.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the book of Moses talks about like putting in the heart of the serpent, and then it's like parentheses, for he had many who followed after him, or something like that. I know that's not an exact quote, but something very close to that. So yeah, and so this again kind of representative generally of mankind and of their effort to overthrow us and our potential. So there are a lot of like layers to this symbolism, and the cool thing about symbols is they can mean more than one thing at once. You know, like there's an interpretation that
they often do,
and often do, yeah, and are intended to. Like, there's so much depth to all of this. That's like, that's why if you start getting that, you can go to the temple and you can be in a very spiritual place where you're being told what is essentially the plan of salvation. I mean, you're dealing with like the fall and our experience here in life, and being able to then return to the presence of God. That through Christ. So again, I'm probably getting ahead of myself a little bit and talking about that, because like you're dealing with like the clothing given to Adam and Eve, like their nudity even like represents innocence, right? I mean, if you think of like childhood innocence, and they haven't partaken of the fruit of knowledge. But as they progress, or as they partake of that fruit of knowledge symbolically, that like we as people, we're held more accountable for what we do. And I give kind of a funny analogy in the book, but like if you're to take a 40-year-old man and a baby, if a baby comes running out of the bath naked in front of house guests, it's not a big deal. Maybe it's kind of funny. It's, you see the innocence of the child. But if a 40-year-old man comes running out, like, you hold them responsible. It's a very different action. So there's kind of like this dual symbolism, because then all of a sudden they're ashamed, and shame and sin are very related concepts within Hebrew culture. And so you have like, they're naked in front of God. They're ashamed of themselves. And then this clothing, that clothing represents Jesus Christ.
Which is interesting because It's interesting that they go from not knowing that they were naked to then they do know, and then what's the emotion associated with knowing that you're naked? It's not joy.
Yeah.
We just kind of like pair the two together so quickly that we don't really think about the fact that, that we don't really ask ourselves why. Why is the first, okay, Adam and Eve are now aware that they're naked. First thing that comes to their mind is, this is bad. This is a bad thing. This is something that we need to fix or to do something about, because this is not how it should be or whatever. And
they try to cover themselves, which is interesting. This is just occurring to me right now, but they cover themselves, kind of at Satan's behest, but in a way that doesn't really, and some
do
people,
the job.
Yeah, it doesn't really do the job. Some people have pointed out that like figs can actually be somewhat like poison ivy. I think at least some people are allergic to figs. Which is interesting. I'm not sure if that's intended symbolism or not. But yeah, I mean, but then this
God's
covering of
option
Christ,
was clearly better than whatever they.
and kind of it gives them a coat of skins, which requires the life of the animal, right? Just like the atonement requires the life of Jesus Christ. And I mean, again, I want to be careful in talking sometimes about the temple, but the celestial room represents the presence of God, and we're able to enter the presence of Adam and Eve are able to be in the presence of God with that clothing, though they do have to first come here and they have to learn, and then they can, through Christ, they can re-enter the presence of God. Yeah, there's just so much to that story that I think we miss when we get caught up too much in like the literal interpretation, which feels like the faithful interpretation. At least to me, it did. But we can miss a lot of the intended symbolism. Again, like Adam is a real person, right? I mean, he's going to return. He's going to, come to Adam and Diam, and he's the Archangel Michael. He's a real person, but he's the parent of our race. So kind of he and Eve. So, I mean, as such, they kind of represent the entirety of the human race. There are so many little details like that become more apparent as we stop thinking about it as a nugget of history, like we might learn about World War II or something, like it's not that. It's been revealed over and over and over again to multiple prophets throughout time, not because it's some really interesting history, but because it is part of a temple making covenant. And that's kind of the to me anyway, was this groundbreaking, mind opening realization is that when you start putting together the book of Moses alongside the book of Exodus, and you realize how that fits together. But this all came talking about kind of conspiracy theories. But I think the reason that the Adam and Eve story and the creation story is in the book of Genesis, I actually think it makes a lot of sense with some of the things with the King Josiah reforms. Are you familiar with those at all?
No.
So in the Bible, and this is where you get into a little bit touchy territory, but it is we know that there are things taken from the Bible. That is doctrine. That's in the Book of Mormon. Is it Nephi who talks about like plain precious things?
Yes.
And I believe some of those plain precious things are this, that there are a group of people often referred to by academics as the Deuteronomists, so there's a king. His name's Josiah. He's 8 years old. Boy king.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah. And he apparently, according to the Bible, very righteous and reformed the temple and got rid of all the wicked things in the temple. And then weirdly, despite that, the Hebrews are then captured and hauled off to Babylon. The temple is destroyed. That's the story that we have. However, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that, and I'm not even blaming Josiah, because frankly, he's a boy king being manipulated by somebody. He's 8 years old. Age of accountability, but not that level of accountability. But it would make sense. And there's research to support the idea that there are those who wanted to take out the more spiritual aspects of the religion, and who removed those things from the temple. And you can't just take away, it's so integrated in the culture, you can't take away the creation story, but you can move it. You can move it over to Genesis and then attach it to existing genealogies, and make it feel like, oh yeah, what you heard, that was true. But like, we're just talking about like a history here.
Yeah.
And you're getting rid of, because what they hated was the atoning Messiah. The idea that like there was going to be someone to pay for their sins and that they were going to be the ones that kill them. You know, that they were going to kill their own God. I mean, that is the prophecy. That's why Lehi was chased out of Jerusalem. That's why they tried to kill him and killed other prophets. And it's that Lehi talks about that. They kill the prophets who talk about the Messiah. And you look in the Book of Mormon, and you know, like when he's just prophesying the destruction of Jerusalem, they laugh at him. But when he brings up the Messiah, they try to kill him.
Yeah.
And
that's an interesting point.
Yeah. And that's a point I'm stealing from somebody. I don't remember who. I'd love to give him credit. But like, yeah, I'm like, oh, that's really interesting though. Because it's shortly after that, it's this same time period that like basically everything was taken out of the temple. Like it was the Ark of the Covenant taken out then. It might've been, certainly like the staff with the serpent on it from Moses, and some of their holy artifacts or relics were all taken out of the temple and other things and destroyed. And so in the temple just becomes about this animal sacrifice, right? And all is in the animal sacrifice. But if you look at like a lot of other things that would happen, and I mean, I guess they still did like the annual like atonement ritual. There are a few things that would happen, but like a lot of things that are alluded to, and we know very little about what happened in the first temple. I think there is only one existent artifact from the first temple before, and then there's the second temple, which is the one that Jesus went to and he cleansed and everything. But that first temple, I believe, is a different religion, and then they're hauled off to Babylon. And these people hauled off to Babylon, they're people who, the leaders, they're the ones who destroyed the temple to begin with. And they kind of come back with this other understanding of the creation story as being more historical. And we don't see all of that symbolism built into the second temple in the same way. I don't know if at all. I'm less familiar with second temple than first temple. But like, I mean, and Jesus comes and he's upset, right? He's upset with who? He's upset with the scribes, the ones who are writing the scriptures, right? And like things clearly, like things have changed, like things are messed up. And he goes and he cleanses the temple. He cleanses it personally, right? And like there's clearly like great wickedness happening then. And so we have these shadows of things happening in history. And not all of it aligns with the story that we're told in the Bible. Because as much as I love the Bible, and I really do, like there are aspects of it that we know have been corrupted over time. It's been thousands of years.
Yeah.
And there are people with agendas. And yeah, I mean, I it's my belief that people, came back after they were released from Babylon, and it was a different religion at that point. And they'd moved that story from Exodus to Genesis and made a number of other changes to basically get rid of the more spiritual aspects of the religion, and it became a much more practical religion. And yeah. And so, I mean, the point of the whole book is, I mean, one, just kind of setting up that history to help us understand where everything came from, and so that we can understand it in a more productive way, and then really breaking down all of the symbolism and what things would have meant, either based on historical kind of scholarly looks on what things meant to people at the time, or connecting back to other scriptures and prophetic statements on the topic. And that's it to me has been an awesome experience. I mean, frankly, regardless whether or not I could not sell a single copy, and feel like I was significantly enlightened by it. I never wrote it to make money or something. More than anything, I realized like this clarity from me. I'm like, I think there are a lot of other people out there that would benefit from understanding this history and background. And what does that mean for evolution, though? I mean, I don't know. That's the weird part of it, because you go into this question of how does it fit together, but I'm not sure that it does, and that they also don't fight each other. It just, I don't know. Are scientists right? God's not going to reveal that. Or his science is way above our science, like you're saying. Like what's he going to correct it with something that we can't even understand? Because it's way beyond us. Like it's just, if scientists figure out that evolution's 100%, no question about it, like, okay, like, I don't know how God did it. I have a lot of questions about evolution myself. Like I'm a little skeptical just because there are things about it, but I'm like, and so I don't know that it answers the question. The book doesn't necessarily answer the question of, of evolution itself, but it answers the question of the creation story and how it relates to the theory of evolution. Because they're two different topics, and we need to respect them as two different topics, which is something that never really occurred to me, because I agree with the statement that you made earlier. I think your brother is saying that like they're two different, like the truth is truth. But they're not necessarily on the same topic, like truth is truth, and everything can come together and fit, whether it be math and English and all these things, like they shouldn't contradict.
Well, right now they're not going to.
Yeah,
they're
but you
not
have to
going to come
understand
together.
what they're trying to say to begin with. Like, is something intended as a literal history, or is it teaching, the plan of salvation in a very symbolic way?
Well, I'll tell you, Tom, I'll just play devil's advocate here,
please.
because I think it's helpful. I do this because it helped me when I kind of got into.
What'd you get into?
No, I don't even know how to say it. Like, I'll try to put this into words, just giving a lot of context.
I have your ability to offend me is like, it's not because of you.
I'm the same way.
Yeah.
If you're enjoying the Moxie Show, please like the video and subscribe to my YouTube channel, or leave a rating and review on your favorite podcasting platform and share the show with someone. Also, if you really want to support the show and get this thing off the ground, consider signing up for my Patreon, where you can receive early access to episodes, exclusive episodes with my family and close friends, and more exclusive perks. If you're listening to this, you're helping make my dream a reality. So thank you.
When I grew up, it was sort of the stigma to it. I don't want to say it depends on the writer. It depends on the LDS writer, but LDS writers are often frowned upon.
By who?
By traditional members, by other members.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because they present ideas that on the surface sound deviant to
100%
what the prophets have
I can't tell you how nervous I was to mentally go down this road.
Right. Because that's another thing that I think the tables are turning a lot on as well. But I that's a conversation for another day. I think that, I think there's a lot to be learned here. And I think that it's very, very important. It's obviously the most important thing to not jump ahead of the prophets.
Yeah.
But what that looks like and what that means I think is misunderstood by a lot of the traditional membership of the church. And I think there's a lot of room for, in fact, there's scriptures in the Doctrine and Covenants where Joseph Smith kind of encourages this behavior. He's like, he's like, talk about the theories, study, create your theories and put things to the test. And
he would invite speakers from other churches and all kinds of stuff. Like, he was very open.
Joseph Smith was that way.
Oops, sorry, I'm messing up.
No, you're fine.
Adjust the mic.
It's flimsy. I got to get a new one. But yeah, Joseph Smith was that way. He was very, because that's where he came from, was like, look, man, I don't know what's going on. I just want to know what the truth is.
Yeah.
And that's a common denominator that I've seen with a lot of great people in history is just, I think that's what true humility looks like. I think a lot of people look at people like Joseph Smith and they're like, he was very arrogant or very prideful, but that's what humility actually looks like. People think humility just means that you just insult yourself and tell yourself, don't say anything good about yourself because then you're being prideful. But that's not what humility is. Humility is like, you want to put your bias aside and find the truth and do whatever it is, and back to my point is people aren't even, I think that there's a number of, like, again, this is just based on my own personal experience. I never would have even looked at a book like this.
Yeah.
As soon as I hear a guy before, the old Kevin, when he hears you talking about that, I hear, oh man, here's another guy with his crazy idea about the creation and we're going off the rails and I'm not going to give it the time of day.
Yeah.
How do you, I think the biggest one for me is like, what I was told by the same people, what I've always been told is people in the church have postulated, or people in the world have postulated about like, how was the fruit of the tree really a fruit, or was it like some people believe it was intercourse, or what it, was it a symbol of this or that? And what I was always told was that the church says that it was a fruit, and the church says that it was a garden. It was the Garden of Eden. There was a fruit that they partook of, and that it was very, while it was very symbolic, it was also pretty literal. And I don't know why we believe that way, or why we think, or who's saying that, or, I don't know which prophets were the ones that's
what you'd have to track down. That is,
and that's what I see. I've heard many other things along those same lines that fall under those same rules, is just stuff that I heard.
Yeah.
But then upon further review and actually looking into like who, you find that nobody ever actually said it.
Yep. There are a lot of things. I think one of the challenges we face in the church generally, all kind of interrelated. One is there are things that have never been taught in the church that as revelations, as official doctrine that get accepted as such, because we're a church of converts to a great degree. And as people convert, they come with their, memories of things that they've been taught, and it's not that different in many ways. Mm-hmm. But then it kind of just gets into the culture and oh no, wait, that's a doctrine that that's been revealed to us. We can't mess with that. It was never said. Right. So there's some of that literally was just I hate to get into this dirty topic, but when you're dealing with race and the priesthood, mm-hmm. That is very much what happened. Some very popular Protestant perspectives at the time got integrated. Even at the highest levels of the church, and kind of understandings of things that were never taught, never taught by God, but people came to believe them because they were in the time that they're in, and those are things that just kind of got integrated from conversions from other religions and things like that. We have to watch out for it. And it's hard to get it out sometimes because we start accepting things as believing that that there was a revelation about there was never a revelation. And the church has said this. There's never a revelation about Black people not being able to receive the priesthood. And it's very unfortunate that that whole situation ever occurred, because it never happened, but people came to assume because, whatever. So what am I trying to say with this? Like, it's a tricky thing. Like, a lot of times there are things that, like, I was raised to believe this or that, like my Sunday school teacher said. And so in my head, I'm like, oh, this is like this doctrine of the church is like really important. And then you can't find a source for it, because like my Sunday school teacher, being as sincere as can be, also misunderstood or misbelieved something. And so I think we need to be very careful, going back to like this, my very fact-based orientation is like, it's annoying because you hate to be like a fact checker all the time, but like we do need to make sure that, like, when particularly on the most important doctrines, that we understand what actually has been said and what has not, because a lot of things have not been. I mean, talking about the origin of man, right? Very clear statement, gets quoted all the time, never gets quoted. I had no idea. Even people who know a lot about it, I kind of came across this quote. I think I was reading, oh goodness, what is the name of the super old like church magazine? I can't even think what it's called. But like during Joseph Smith's day.
I know what you're talking about.
It's
the Star something.
Star Millennial, was that the one? Or
Millennial Star.
I think it's in the Millennial Star, if I'm not mistaken. But like, and I'm just kind of reading through kind of some articles and things, and I see, Joseph F. Smith, this is where they would announce such things. And he's like, oh, that wasn't a revelation. That was, he never said it was a revelation. He made that clear in the original statement, but further clarified, like, we have not received revelation on this. We have very little revelation related to the creation. And yet I thought for years that was like the church has no official stance on the theory of evolution. And that's stated throughout, a lot of different documents and statements and things.
Which is already just
but
that
that's confusing.
Just that alone. I have this principle applies to a lot of the doctrines of the church, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But just the fact that we don't have a stance on evolution is worth looking into that. It's just an interesting thing. If the earth wasn't, if we were only 6,000 years old and the creation was exactly how we all think that it is, it just seems very easy for the church to have been like, yep, this is how it was. They'd be saying the same things that I do. We don't know what the dinosaur bones are all about, but this is what we know, is that the church, that this is how it happened. But the church doesn't say that. They just say, we don't have a stance on this.
Which is interesting, because that's also kind of in reverse, them saying, if they don't have a stance on the theory of evolution, and they don't have any revelation on how the creation was done, then that's saying that like the creation story isn't a revelation on creation.
Explain that.
Well, if the creation, we'll just say the Genesis, just keep things simple. We have a Genesis creation account. Mm-hmm. And the church is saying, we don't have revelation on the specific processes of how the earth was created. And we have the creation account. That means that the creation account is not logically, that would imply that the creation account is not viewed as a revelation on the specific processes
of creation.
Which, again, because we're raised with
a great point.
With certain assumptions, we're like, oh no, that can't be true. Right? I mean, that's the way I would have reacted, in the exact same way that, that you're saying, like, reading a book like this, I'm like, here's this guy. Right. And that's what, like, my book, is heavily footnoted. I don't know how many footnotes per page. But like, so you can see exactly where I'm pulling, like, cause I wouldn't trust me right from an outside, who's Tom Schleiffarth, right?
Of course.
You got to be real about that. But like, I am constantly citing the prophets and the apostles, the scriptures. Like, for example, we're talking about like Genesis not being the appropriate place for the creation story, rather being Exodus. That's not just me saying that. That's what it says in the book of Moses. I mean, it doesn't use those words, but it talks about Moses going up to the mountain and he receives the creation story. That is in the timeline of him going up to the mountain, receiving the 10 Commandments, and receiving all of the temple instruction that's recorded in Exodus. And, you know, when you piece those two pieces together of the same event, you're like, oh, he received the creation story directly before receiving the temple instruction on how to build and how to use the temple, which is interesting. I feel like I was starting to make this point earlier. I don't think I actually said it, but Joseph Smith had the same experience. So he end of 1830 is kind of when everything wraps up. Like I want to say off the top of my head, like June 1830 to December of 1830, he is receiving what we now call the first 5 chapters of the book of Moses, which is the creation account. The other stuff that we call the book of Moses is like Enoch and some other stuff that probably shouldn't be titled Book of Moses. That title is attached later, and it's just kind of whatever. But so between June of 1830 to December of 1830, he receives several revelations on the creation story, and then in like I want to say January 2nd, he receives his first revelation about the endowment, which is exactly what happened to Moses.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all together, right? Okay, here's the story. Here's the temple stuff that you need to know. I mean, it's the same pattern, right? And that doesn't necessarily in and of itself prove anything. But when you look at all this, like it's quite, and again, looking at the ancient Hebrew, like the way the temple was built, and it was all about the creation story. And this is all documented. Like don't trust me. Like look at my footnotes. It's heavily footnoted. There are probably 3 pages throughout the whole thing. They don't have footnotes. Everything else probably has like 3, 4, 5 footnotes that, you know, like, and they're not long pages, you know, like it's, heavily, I mean, if I don't think like it is like granted, like Jesus Christ is our savior, like I'm footnoting the thing, you know, like, you know, like there's some things I just have to take for granted that people, you know, are not going to have questions about. But like generally anything that is any kind of claim being made in the book, it is heavily footnoted, know exactly where it's coming from. And most of the time it's coming straight out of the scriptures. You know, when it comes to like historical stuff, I'm more citing like scholarly, history kind of things that have been done that aren't necessarily the expertise of like an apostle or something. You know, we're looking at like the archaeology that's been done, on whatever, you know, Hebrew temples or other things like that. So yeah, I mean, don't trust me. I mean, I certainly do not take the place of an apostle, right? But look at what the apostles have actually said, because what we perceive, certainly what I perceived 2.5 years ago, whatever it was when I first kind of started on this journey, was this very literal interpretation of a very symbolic story.
Have you?
And that's just real quick. That's not the church's stance, and it's never been the church's stance. Even though like the Origin of Man statement was made, that was not that was, I don't want to say it was retracted, but it was clarified. It was never stated as a revelation. It was clarified by the same person who issued it as not being revelatory and not being intended to be taken as such.
How hard have you tried to prove yourself wrong? That's something I like to do.
Yeah, super important. On what point? Like there are a lot of asks. I mean, on the main point, as
it's hard to say on the book.
Yeah, I mean, so the main there's a lot in it, but the main argument of the book is that basically that it's not about the question Adam versus evolution. Rather, we're kind of asking the wrong question because we've misunderstood the original context. So I mean, I could say like I could argue against myself. Well, you know, the fact that like Moses receives this at the same time as he goes up and receives the temple instructions, you know, doesn't mean that it's not historical. Like that's true. And I'm not saying that it's not historical, just to be clear. I don't know. That's what I was saying earlier. Like I don't have I don't have an opinion anymore on the theory of evolution because I don't feel like scientifically I know enough about it. But I also don't think, I think that it's a detriment to us to assume that like there's
no
ever
room
intended.
for it.
Yeah. It was never intended as like a historical lesson. That's not God's goal with us, but that doesn't mean that there aren't historical elements to it. Like there are, we know that there are, we know that Adam is real. We know that like, I do think that there's breakdown of what these symbols mean. And if you disagree with my interpretation of the symbol, I think that's totally fair. Like I gave a historically based and scripturally based breakdown of symbols that I think would be very beneficial. But the part I think is very hard to argue against is understanding that the original intent of the creation story was temple covenants. I think it's very hard to argue otherwise. And you could say that like, oh, it doesn't prove that it's not historical. That's true. It doesn't prove anything, but I think you need to stop me. Like, wait, am I understanding this properly? Like, it could be historical. I don't know. I wasn't there. Like that's. But we need to stop and be like, wait, but what is the purpose of this story? And that's what's important. And we can believe whatever you want about history, And I think that's totally legitimate. We can have those discussions, but understanding what God's goal is with that story, whether historical or not, understanding that it is symbolic, as the church reiterates all the time, and that when we look at it as symbolic, we can come to a much greater understanding of what God intends than if we were to look at it from just hey, here's an interesting nugget of history that God wants me to know.
It's a great point because we all tell each other and we all hear all the time that God cares more about what you would learn from the creation instead of like the geography of it or the chronology of it and then everybody's like, we're like, yeah, no, definitely. Like it's all about what we're supposed to learn here. But then secretly we're like, where did it happen though?
Yeah.
And when did it actually happen? Who are these people or what? But it's true though. It's like what you're saying and the evidence that you're providing is just even more evidence to the point that that's the thing is like, what is the creation story? What is the purpose of the very first story? And it's not, and most people are like, yeah, it's just to show where we came from and learn about where we came from and our origin. And it's like, no. You would think that. You would think that that's the purpose of it. The first story being what was square one like, but what it's really about is the whole picture. It's not so much about the beginning, it's about the present. It's about the past, present, and future. It's the whole and that it just makes more sense that people like myself are just very tempted and inclined to be like to try to get into the weeds of where Adam on Diamonds here. So what was it like 6,000 years ago, or what was happening? And that truly, it's not what we should spend so little time on that, and so much more time on learning the purpose. What does the creation story do for me right now?
Yeah, and it's so interesting because I mentioned this earlier, I know, but like that creation story has been revealed so many times and is reiterated to us all the time in the church in so many different ways, scriptures and temple and everything else. Like, why is it so important that we learn this? I call it a nugget of history. If I have that perspective, which it's kind of a casual way of putting that perspective, but like that was my perspective for a very long time. That like this is how the earth came to be, and God's just telling it. But why is that so important?
Yeah,
how does that affect my salvation?
There's no way it would keep coming up if it was just another chapter in the history book. I agree. It's a great point.
But yeah, it's a lot to take in. It is like it took. It sometimes can be hard. I totally get your point, like with like LDS authors and like who do we trust?
Because I think there are some nutcases out there.
Oh yeah, 100%. I hope I'm not one of them. I certainly try not to be. I probably shouldn't have led into the conversation with conspiracy theories, but like, just kidding. But like, no, but I mean, like I said, I mean, in reality, like this stuff does happen, and what we need to stay as like fact-based as we can, because it's very easy to, you look at just some random author and you can get somebody to say something that you agree with or you want to hear. The Book of Mormon talks about like, the itching ears. I'm trying to remember the exact, but people like listening with like itching ears to these like false preachers, but like that it's easy to like whatever we want to hear, we can find somebody to say it, but what's it based on? And that's why, like, I was saying in my podcast that I had, my 5-minute fact check podcast, like I cited my sources all the time, because even if people aren't going to look at it, I think it's really important that they're able to. And the same thing, my book, Adam versus Evolution, is heavily footnoted and carefully footnoted because like I want people to be able to access it. Actually, I really leaned hard on publicly available sources, not because like I would try to find the online version of something if I could, even if I have the book right next to me, because I want people to be able to access it. Yeah. I want people to be able to look and see where I'm coming from and fact check me, because that's important, because who is Tom Schleiffarth, right? And people can't even say my name. but I mean, it's important that we're able to do that. And
just because you said that this person said this doesn't mean that your interpretation may be exactly.
Exactly. Is it possible I misinterpret something? Absolutely. Like what scripture am I getting that from? What historical document? Like, people take things out of context all the time. I mean, I do my best not to, right? But to suggest that like I am perfect at everything, I think that's, a wrong way to go, and people need to be able to verify that. So yeah, I mean, as far as sources go, like by and large, very easy to find the exact web address of a vast majority of my sources are online versions and not just random websites, right? Just to be clear, but like online versions as much as I could, because it's so important. I mean, a lot of things, like you might go to like Joseph Smith papers, or you might go to, some of these as primary of a source as possible, to be able to look at what was actually said. I pulled some things out of like archive.org, the Internet Archive, because they have like original copies of like Millennial Star. Right. Yeah. And sometimes like I would find things misquoted by another source that maybe had done research on it, and not intentionally, but just like, oh, that word is not what it said, just like little things. And so I think it's really important that you get the original, and anywhere that I could, like, I mean, like I send you to the PDF that's archived on the Internet Archive, PDF version of that Millennial Star edition, that you can go and read the article written by Joseph F. Smith and what he said there, because that's important. There are a lot of things. What was one thing I found a lot of this is a little off topic, but like, are you familiar with Joseph Smith's famous talk is King Follett Discourse? Mm-hmm. There are so many versions of that discourse, and there are various reasons for it, but like a little misquoted, or like, I mean, part of it's because it's like written in shorthand by like three different people, but like there's so many different like little variations. Like, you need to be careful with, I mean, who's your source? Where are you getting it from? I mean, it's something that I think we should all take seriously. I think that's the biggest thing is we shouldn't assume that our assumptions are right. There are a lot of things in the gospel, in church, that we have taken for granted that not always were actually said. And that we assume that the church has certain stances, or has said certain things, and they aren't there.
Oh yeah. The other thing that kind of proves the truth of these things is
of which things?
Well, just when in the context of putting stuff like this to the test, how do we know that what Tom is saying is true? How do we know that anything in this book is true? Or how do we know that this other author isn't? And Jesus said that it's your fruits. It's by the fruits. You want to know want to know about the tree? Then you take the fruit. And that was another, that's kind of the thing that's kept me going along this path, is because the more I learn about these, I've been into books by LDS authors that have far crazier ideas than anything we've talked about. And
what's the craziest?
We'd have to have another conversation.
Yeah, that's fair. Sorry.
In fact, I'm in the process of getting the author on here. Anyway, but I think, when you come across stuff like this, and I've read it and I've thought about it and I prayed it, because I go to God and I'm like, these are really big game changers, man. Like this is huge, and I don't want to be wrong about this. I don't want this, I don't want to be deceived in this regard. So how do I know? Like, tell me, what is it? And that's the thing that keeps bringing me back is God's like, how is it affecting you? What is, upon receiving this knowledge and upon learning these things, what is it doing for you? And all it's doing is just making me want to repent more, to repent more consistently, and to go to the temple more often, and to hear people out more, and really look at things before I just jump to my conclusions and brand people and label people. And it's just all good fruits from these exercises and from these writings. And even if they're not perfect, there's just a general spirit of it that I'm like, this is good literature. It's having a positive impact, and I'm not like, as soon as you start thinking like, oh, I'm Jesus Christ, or I'm the Davidic servant, and I have to take my family out into the mountain, and like those are bad fruits. Like that's, yeah. And I don't even know if it's because of the writings or just because of your own crazy ideas, but that, we know what bad fruits look like. We've seen it. And until you're there, like I feel so the opposite of that. Like I've never all this has done is made me want to be a more devoted member. It has encouraged me to do, as far as my actions go, all it has done is just made me want to do what I have, the right things that I've done in my life previous, but just more. It just motivates me to do more of it. And I just, that's a huge litmus test for me for truth is what's it doing to you? And
I mean, that's Christ's standard, right? I mean, is by their fruits. I mean, speaking specifically of prophets, but like, I think it can be applied to lots of things. I mean, it's my belief that like more than anything, this life is about who we're becoming. And so that the idea of fruits, I think, is very important. Like, yes, there are things we should do and shouldn't do, but like, what is it doing to us? Right. And I think that's kind of my perspective in general about the gospel, is how are we becoming more like God? And if we're doing something just for the sake of doing it, you checked off reading your scriptures, but like, it's not, like you're not taking it to heart. Is that even of value? I mean, probably to some degree. Right. But it's just that fruits idea.
Right. Is there, so the last thing that I like to do with all my guests is just give them, I want you to have the opportunity to, if anything, to, this is your platform. I feel like everybody's got something they want to, well, maybe not everybody, but some people have something that they just want people to know, and they want people to, what do we want? What's the number one message from Tom?
Yeah, it's something I wish I would have thought about before coming on here. And I've seen you do it to other people. It didn't even cross my mind.
The reason I don't tell people that is because
Try to get too profound.
it's not. Yeah, well, that's part of it. Like I don't want it to be ingenuine, you know, and I think that the things that people want to tell people are at least should be on the forefront of their mind. And so, you know, maybe like if you were to ask me, if I was to go onto a podcast and they're like, what's most important? Like, what's the important message from you right now that you want everybody to know? I feel like I'd have a pretty good answer to that I, something that I'm passionate about, that I'm like, dude, this is what I think about. This is what makes me tick. This is why I get up in the morning. So,
yeah. I mean, to answer your question, like the thing that drives me a lot in life, and I do think is really important. I've already touched on this, and it's obviously on my mind because of our discussion, but is being, it's going to come out wrong, but being right is really important. Not being right, like I need to prove that I'm right, prove I'm wrong, but like as long as I am right, you know, but like making sure that we're right. And that's not to suggest that like anything I've written is like, oh man, that's the perfect, like I'm so right about this. That's not what I'm saying at all, like in reference to my book. But it's so important to make sure that we're being careful with our assumptions, and that we make sure that especially before we criticize other people, make sure that we're actually even right in that criticism. One of the funniest things that I see, especially online, is somebody like correcting somebody's comment or something, like trying to call them out and then being totally wrong themselves. And it's just like, it's hilarious, you know, like cause it takes a certain amount of like pride to like call somebody out, you know, and then being like wrong. It's just funny, you know, but like, don't be that person, you know, like be maybe slow to speak and quick to listen.
Yeah. I've often pondered how, while the gospel is so deep and so profound, that it's also simple.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm like, how, because then when I start to feel, when I have conversations like these, I start to feel like, oh my gosh, dude, the gospel is just this endless, complex web of so many little things that, and I'm like, but and so then I have to like bring myself back, and I'm like, is this concept really as complex as it sounds and as I'm making it out to be? And I often have learning experiences with those questions, because then I realize, I look at it and I'm like, you know what? If I'm really looking at it from an eternal perspective, it's a pretty simple concept.
Yeah.
And I just didn't have it right before, and I needed to just be wrong. And now, you know, and that's what's changed me in a major way in recent years. Is I tell people, like, I never, ever completely shut the door on an idea. And I used to, you know, and I think a lot of people, you know, we're just naturally inclined to do that. You know, if it makes sense to me, or if this, and people will come at us with just ridiculous ideas, and that with no prior context. And you're just like, you're an idiot. Like obviously you're wrong. And that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. But now when I hear stuff even like that, I'm like, I want to look into that. I'll have to look into that. Or maybe I won't look into that. But if I don't look into it, then I'm not going to tell them they're wrong.
Sure.
You know, I'm not going to be like, I'm just going to be like, that sounds crazy right now, given what I currently know, but I'm not going to tell you that you're just absolutely wrong if it's something that I am not willing to put effort into, because people arrive at their conclusions through things. You know, it'd be one thing if you came forward and told everybody, these ideas just on a surface level in one sentence, and they'd be like, I don't know about that, Tom. But then if you're like, well, I wrote a book. So like there's more to it than what I'm telling you right now, obviously. Yeah. And that's the thing is people are like, okay, well, I'm not going to read your book, but you're still wrong. And you're like, well, you can't say that until you read the book.
But what's hard too is like, we only have so much time in the day.
Yeah.
So you've got to make those choices. What
do I spend my time on looking into?
What is important to know about?
But it all comes back to the Spirit. The Spirit is the thing it's going to tell you how much time you need to spend on this. The Spirit's going to tell you how much, if this certain effort is worth it. The Spirit's going to tell you if this thing is right or wrong. I mean, it truly is going to be the make or break for these days. I mean, there's just so much now. There's so much information. There's so much time. There's so many things to sift through. There's so many claims being made, and there's so many things happening, and we're just mortals, man. Even with our devices, even with the internet, even with everybody recording everything, there's still just an infinite amount of stuff to sift through. And if you don't look to a higher power, it's just it's not gonna go over well for you in the end. You're either gonna just quit on it all and just stop trying to understand and just kind of ride the wave until you're dead, or you're going to drive yourself crazy and then end up wasting a lot of time not actually doing anything. Anyway, that's kind of my babbling for the episode. So what'd we miss? Anything?
What do you mean? With what you were saying?
With what you're saying.
Oh, no. I mean, I think I covered, the basics, about as far as we can go in a format like this. I mean, there's a lot, obviously, in the book, really hammering out the details. But I guess I should say, it's coming out middle of March, I believe the 16th, and it's going to be available for pre-order on Amazon.com. It's called Adam versus Evolution.
You can pre-order it on Amazon, and that's going to be available sooner. Like you can,
by the time this podcast drops, it'll be ready for pre-order.
Yeah, I'll have a link to the pre-order in the description of either the video or the episode, wherever people are listening to. But yeah, you can find it there. It's hard to sell me on a book. And you may have sold me on this.
Well, fantastic. I will, as soon as I have preprint copies, I will get you a copy.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
If you're satisfied, I'm satisfied. So
I'm good.
I appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it.
We'll have to have some more conversations.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
All right.